Okay, so we should be all right with that sheets foot roller, and we're going to now move on into walkers. Let's cruise on through a little bit. We're going to go to page 238 next. Page 238. There's just a couple of basic pieces of information, nothing really earth-shattering here that I want you to highlight. At the top of the page, Walker discusses drilling rock using pneumatic jackhammer drills. And it says the handheld jackhammer is a popular rock drilling on all types of construction jobs. Underneath that table, in the middle of page 238, rock drilling using a wagon drill. And it tells us what a wagon drill is. It consists of a one-piece tubular frame, pneumatic or steel tracks, a tilting tower on which is mounted a heavy pneumatic drill. Okay. Not something we use a lot in this area of the country. It does talk about using pneumatic diggers at the bottom. It's in bold print, excavating using pneumatic diggers. And it talks about, it discusses at the top of page 239 that on the work that they're discussing here, on work of this kind, 2 workers using air picks and 6 workers shoveling will loosen and shovel about 35 to 40 cubic yards in an 8-hour day. Okay. There is a discussion of a drop hammer on page 240 where there's a discussion of pile foundations. And the second paragraph below where it says drop hammer in bold print, I'd like for you to highlight that the weight of a drop hammer should be about 1/3 the weight of the pile to be driven. About 1/3 the weight of the pile to be driven. Let's move on to page 245. And we're talking about driving pilings, cutting pilings. There's wood pilings in this section, there's concrete pilings. And we're going to read the last paragraph on page 245. Cutting off wood piles. After the wood piles have been driven, the tops projecting above the ground will have to be cut off to grade in order to receive the foundation that's to be placed on them. This cost will vary according to the size, the quarters in which the workers must operate, but on an average job, it should require 1/6 to 1/4 of an hour to cut off each wood pile 12 or 14 inches in diameter with a chainsaw at the following cost per pile. It actually tells you about what it will cost and what have you. There is the following section, which begins on page 249, is about concrete piles. And I want you to go over to page 259 and note the table on page 259. In bold print on this page it says cutting off precast, pre-stressed, square or octagonal piles. So if you look at that table, you'll see that they do differentiate between square and octagonal. They also differentiate between conventional and hydraulic. So make sure, you might want to hit those with 2 different color highlighters. We have conventional and then we have hydraulic, okay, 2 different ways to cut pilings off, and then square and octagonal. There's a possibility that at some point in your life you might have to do a math question. For instance, let's say a 12-inch concrete piling, which is square, if we cut it off using conventional type methods, what would be a conventional method of cutting off a concrete piling? What's the standard way people do it? Use a concrete saw, right? Yeah. If we were going to cut a 12-inch square concrete piling conventionally, how many hours would it take? According to this, an hour, right? So if you had to do a math question and they said you had somebody operating the saw, and then you had a helper, and then you had a supervisor, you would have to pay each one of them an hour's wages, right, for each piling. So watch for that. Watch for that. 268. 268. Here's some shoring information. This is about bracing, using sheet piling, and so forth. At the top of page 268, it reads, this is based on using 2-inch plank for sheeting, 2 rows of 4x6s for our stringers or wales placed near the top and bottom, and 4x6 or 6x6 for braces. Mainly what I want you to note on this page is what's the sheeting, what's a stringer, and what's a brace. Just be able to identify those. We're also told at the top of page 269 that if we were in a deep excavation, if it was 14 to 20 feet deep below grade, we should be using 3-inch planks for our sheeting, a 6x8 or an 8x8 on our stringers and wales, and an 8x8 for our timbers and bracing. Wow, that's pretty heavy duty. Let's go to page 273. I'd like for you to go to page 273. We're going to look at a table with regard that discusses, that illustrates common size steel sheeting at the top of page 273. They also call this steel sheet piling. If we look at the bottom of page 272 on the left, well, not on the left, but on page 272 at the bottom, under steel sheet piling, it actually gives us a description of what they're talking about. So if you haven't actually seen it in operation, you might want to read that. It's used for supporting soil in large excavations, cofferdams, trenches, and caissons and so forth, where wood piling is impractical. It's driven with a pile driver like wood, steel, or concrete piles. That's why they call it sheet piling. There are a number of different types of steel sheet piling on the market, but the following will give an idea of the common sizes and weights. And this table is what we're going to concentrate on this page, on page 273. In order to make this table a little more palatable, a little more easy to read, the first thing I'd like for you to do is, and in my book this is what I do, and I'll leave it up to you, but I cross out the 4 right columns because all that's metric, and we're not using metric on the test. So if we can break this table down and only use what we need, it's going to help us. So let's cross out all that's in millimeters, all that's in metric. And if we can disregard the column that says flange thickness, that helps us read this table a little better as well. So we only have, if we do that, we only have 4 columns that we have to pay attention to. We have the section number, what it's called. We have how wide that sheet is in inches. We have how much it weighs per linear foot, and then we have how much it weighs per square foot. Generally, it's going to be the square foot that's going to be more important than the linear foot, but we could use both. So we'll have those 4 columns to work with. So knowing that information right there, by the way, do you see a relationship between the PZ number and the weight in pounds per square foot? Same number, right? This could help. If you have a hard time finding this table, which that's going to be your biggest challenge on test day, is finding stuff. Well, if it's a PZ, well, we already know what it weighs per square foot, right? Good. So let's see if we can figure out having that information, let's see if we can work a math question. On the overhead, I have steel sheet pile. The question I'm asking is how many tons of PZ27 will be needed? We're going to construct a wall 1 mile long and we're gonna be using 20-foot sheets. So we're putting 20-foot sheets down a wall a mile long. And what I wanna know is how many tons we're gonna need. A lot of times we've gotta pay for delivery, they charge us by the ton, so we need to figure out how many tons. If you're having a hard time conceptualizing what that'll look like, the wall will look something like this. So see if you can figure that out. How many tons of PZ27? Do you know how many feet are in a mile? Do you know how many meters are in a kilometer?
How many meters in a kilometer?
1,000
Kilometer is 1,000.
1,000 meters, right? Do you use in Hungary, do you use metric?
Yeah.
But in English measurements, how many feet are in a mile? 5,280, right? Because I showed you right there, that's why I took it off.
I was gonna go look, I was just getting ready to look it up, and then it's just like, hey.
I showed you. But you know you could find it in chapter 24, page 2, right?
Right.
Yeah. You know that's where you're gonna find it if you don't know where it is. But this, I went ahead and showed this to you because I wanted you to be able to see what I was talking about, kind of conceptualize it. There you go. So 20 feet tall, 5,280. How many tons is it? Can you figure that out?
And that was a PZ, what was it again?
27, wasn't it?
PZ 27. Yeah. $48,000.
Got A, B, C, or D here.